And by participating in this meeting, you're consenting to be recorded. Okay, so the purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the draft TIP or Transportation Improvement Program. Sorry about this. I'm having some technical issue with the screen sharing. All right, let's see if we can do this now.
See if they're over there.
No, I think I've got it figured out. I just need to. I can't, for some reason, this isn't moving. Sorry about this.
Yeah. Oh, so there you go.
There we go. Okay. So the purpose of the meeting, as I mentioned, will be to provide an overview of the regional transportation planning, present the draft 2027-2030 SEDA COG Transportation Improvement Program, which we'll be calling the TIP from now on, describe the role of public feedback, and solicit input on the draft TIP. And there will be a time at the meeting, at the end of the meeting, for question and answers. The MPO is a transportation planning and policymaking body made up of representatives from local government and transportation agencies with authority and responsibility in metropolitan planning areas. Federal legislation passed in the early 1970s required the formation of an MPO for any urbanized area with a population greater than 50,000. MPOs were created to ensure that existing and future expenditures for transportation projects and programs were based on a continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive, or 3C, planning process. Federal funding for transportation projects and programs is channeled through the MPO. The SEDA COG MPO satisfies the federal and state requirements of conducting a 3C transportation planning process for the region. For most major projects, the MPO takes the lead for the initial steps, including determination of the type of improvement and funds to be used for it. And then thereafter, PennDOT, a county, municipality, transit agency, or other implementing agency usually takes the lead. SEDA COG MPO is designated by the governor in March 2013 based on the 2010 census data. Prior to 2013, we completed similar functions while acting as an 8-county RPO, or rural planning organization. There are 23 MPOs and RPOs and 1 independent county, that is Wayne County, across the state. And SEDA COG also serves as the local development district, or LDD, and that contains 11 counties, but the MPO only covers 8 counties, and the 3 counties that are part of other MPOs include Center, Lycoming, and Perry. To staff the SEDA COG MPO, we have four full-time staff and 1 part-time staffer, along with typically 1 intern, which helps us usually in the GIS department. We have 2 consultant teams on open-end agreements for special services and support of major plans or studies. And we engage in convening, educating, and planning efforts for goal setting. Other partners that we work with on a frequent basis include chambers of commerce, for example, modal operators such as transit agencies, bike ped advocates, businesses, human service agencies, and others. We compile and analyze transportation, socioeconomic, and land use data and maps, and then support local project management and implementation. This table here shows the voting membership of the MPO, and there are 17 members. These are also regularly participating. There are also regularly non-participating non-voting members from Lycoming County, Center County, FHWA, and others. The listed representatives and their agencies directly participate in SEDA COG's TIP development process. They include member county governments, transit operating agencies, the two largest municipalities within the Bloomsburg-Berwick urban area, representatives of multimodal interests, PennDOT, SEDA COG Board of Directors, and the Transportation Program. Additional municipalities within the region participate through their respective county governments. Countless other groups, the business community, and the public become involved through the SEDA COG public participation process, in addition to involvement at the municipal and county level. A variety of jurisdictions and agencies in the region necessitates a high degree of coordination by SEDA COG during the TIP development process. This slide gives you an overview of the MPO region, which is quite large. As I mentioned, there are 8 counties. That is Clinton, Columbia, Montour, Northumberland, Union, Snyder, Mifflin, and Juniata. The MPO land area represents 8% of the total Pennsylvania land area, but the population represents about 3% of the Pennsylvania total. It's a web of dispersed urban areas across broad area of central Pennsylvania. There are, just for reference, the square mileage of the MPO is approximately the size of Delaware. So we have quite a chunk of participations. And one of the things to note is that the daily vehicle mile traveled, or DVMT, declined a little bit in 2020 to 8.8 million due to COVID, and then quickly rebounded in 2021. We also have 2 Class 1 railroad lines, active short line and regional railroad lines, which includes the JRA in 7 of the MPO counties, with significant carloads and service for area manufacturers. We also have an Amtrak station in Lewistown, which is in the process of receiving significant ADA upgrades to make it more accessible. Most service in terms of transit is demand responsive. We do have a fixed route in the lower Anthracite area, and some microtransit service has been initiated by Rapid Transit in Columbia, Montour, Northumberland, Union, and Snyder counties. And a designated stop service is also initiated by STEP in Clinton County. An update to our coordinated public transit/human services transportation plan was adopted in 2024. The region also includes state-owned bridges greater than 8 feet and locally owned bridges greater than 20 feet. And you can see that there are 2,283 of those. And there's a sustained focus that we have on bridge needs and projects, particularly at the local level, but also the state level, reducing poor bridges, identifying and addressing local bridge concerns as well. There are also 243 traffic signals and a number of trails and growing trail mileage.
Kristen hates Justin with PennDOT.
Sure.
I just didn't know. Are you sharing your screen with the people online, or
Is it not?
no?
Oh, okay. Well, that's
I just wanted to, before you got any further. Thank you.
Are you able to see it now?
Yes, I am at least. Thank you, Kristen.
Okay. Yeah.
Question.
Sure.
For transit operators, what are the flavors?
They are the lower Anthracite transportation service. Is that it's LATS? Yeah, and that runs in the lower Anthracite, and I think they have expanded to Sunbury and down to the mall. I know into Sunbury. I think I passed them on the bridge the other day. And so then we have Rabbit Transit. We have Geisinger actually has a service that operates, and then Cars, which is out of the Mifflin, Juniata area. I think I hit all of them. And then STEP in the Clinton County region. Okay, I think we're back on track. Sorry about that. So are you online? Are you seeing the slide that says transportation infrastructure?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, just verifying. So that information just provides a sampling of the region's multimodal transportation infrastructure. Again, the focus is placed on asset management that improves safety, facilitates efficient movement of people and goods, enhance the quality of life and economic vitality in the region. And still some new capacity is always being added via access roads, especially for industrial parks and other employment centers, bridges, sidewalks, trails, signals, intelligent transportation systems or ITS, et cetera. Pavement markings, vehicle lanes, shoulders, guide rail, right of way, all of those types of things can fall under the infrastructure that we have here in the region, and that is included on the tip. This slide essentially shows how the TIP integrates and relates to the other transportation planning programs. One is the 12-year plan, which the TIP serves as the first 4 years of the 12-year program, which obviously covers 12 years. And then at the base of that triangle is the long-range transportation plan, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. Regionally significant projects must be drawn from the region's long-range plan, and all projects in the TIP must help implement the goals of that plan. That plan is required by federal law and is a document that helps direct transportation and land use decisions. And like I said, we will start talking, having a public meeting about our draft LRTP at 10:15. And then several projects with only preliminary design. The TIP represents the translation of the recommendations from those other documents into short-term program of improvements, and all projects included on the TIP must be consistent with the long-range plan. And several of them, take more than 4 years. So they transfer from the TIP to the TYP. The TIP is a regionally agreed upon list of priority transportation projects. The TIP document must list all projects that intend to use federal transportation funds, along with all non-federally funded projects that are regionally significant. For those in the room, I do have a couple copies of the highway and bridge TIP. I apologize for the small font on it, but it's quite a lot of information. The TIP also includes state funded capital projects, and it represents the transportation improvement priorities of the region and is required by federal law for the region to receive and spend federal transportation funds. The TIP is financially constrained, which means the list of projects must be equal to the amount of state and federal funds that are expected to be available for the region. To add projects or address cost increases for projects, others might need to be deferred. And as a result, the TIP is not a wish list. There is competition between projects for a spot on the TIP. This not only lists specific projects, but also documents the anticipated schedule, the cost for each project phase, which includes preliminary engineering, final design, utilities, right-of-way acquisition, and construction. And inclusion of a project phase in the TIP means that it is seriously expected to be implemented during the TIP time period. This list is also multimodal. In addition to the more traditional highway and bridge projects, it does include public transit, bicycle, pedestrian, freight-related projects as well. And the TIP runs from, as I mentioned, it's the 2027 to 2030 TIP, even though we're adopting it in 2026, and that's because it's based on a fiscal year of October 1st through September 30th. And every 2 years it is updated, and SEDA COG works with PennDOT and its corresponding counties in the MPO to create the draft TIP, referred to as a TIP update or program update. The process is a larger overall effort to align the entire program with regional priorities and available funding. When the TIP update is completed, it has not yet adopted the draft documents. The draft document is released for public comment period, as the public may want to provide comments. And throughout the development, SEDA COG does rely on comments submitted by the public to the State Transportation Commission and other outreach for public and stakeholder input. The projects on the tip are clearly developed collaboratively. Local, regional, and state leaders, including PennDOT and transit agencies, must reach consensus to decide how to spend limited funds on transportation projects, and SEDA COG serves as the facilitator and the convener. SEDA COG meets with PennDOT and county personnel in the odd number years to review priorities before the draft tip is developed. PennDOT's highway and bridge management systems provide much of the data used for keeping these assets in cycle for needed treatments. Local data, inspections, and land use are also used for making decisions. Public input and proposals are also considered continuously as a part of the official comment periods by SEDA COG and the State Transportation Commission, and projects should have well-established purposes and needs. And obviously, we must balance roadway preservation and reconstruction, focusing on preserving roads to extend service life. This can include pipe replacement, shoulder cutting, base repairs, crack sealing, microsurfacing, guide rails, seal coats, etc. And we must have bridge preservation and replacement activities, again, to extend the life cycle of the asset. And this is the right treatment at the right time. Local bridge needs considered, but sometimes special provisions regarding the length, functional classification, inclusion in legislation, et cetera, can help with the local bridge needs. Safety improvements can include traffic signals, realigned intersections, high friction surface treatment, turning lanes, signage, rumble strips, rail crossing, ITS devices, et cetera. And our bike ped and streetscape improvements can often include sidewalks, curbs, crosswalks, trails, bike lanes, street lights, trees, landscaping, all kinds of things like that. And projects can take a considerable amount of time to complete due to the planning, design, permits, bidding, consultations, et cetera, that need to take place. So it can be a long lead time for adding new projects due to the backlog of all of the maintenance needs. And for example, an average bridge project can take anywhere from 3 to 7 years. So I think at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Steve, our transportation director, to finish out the presentation.
Thanks, Kristen, for that overview and provide that information on the background of the Transportation Improvement Program development. I'm going to go through a little bit more detail on some of the specific project financials for this TIP update and individual projects that are included on it. Feel free to interject. Thanks again, Ken, Becky, and Beth for being here with us in person, and the virtual participants. If you have questions, let me know. We do a designated Q&A time here at the end of the slides as well. But just feel free to pose any questions you may have on items as we dig into them. But on this slide here, we're showing the financials. A little bit hard to see those pie charts. We developed like an at-a-glance summary for the Transportation Improvement Program, so the folks don't have to go through and distill hundreds of pages of information, kind of give the highlights here with these graphics. So as you see there, the pie charts, there's 270 total projects for federal fiscal year 2027 through 2030. 201 of those are carryover projects, so which happens, typically you have a high volume of projects that are in design, they go through the engineering, permitting process that takes considerable time, and so they carry over from each TIP update cycle. 62 of the projects are new, so they're first time appearing on the Regions program, and those are valued at about almost $90 million. And there are 7 line item projects, so we reserve some funds where we don't designate for specific projects. Usually those are on bridge, financial accounting, and safety projects for the most part, and some others that are some formula funds we get from the federal government that maybe you don't initially identify a project to use those up front. But most of them are identified, and it's constrained, as Kristen was saying, to the amounts that we expect to be available. A total of $504 million, approximately, including all the federal, state, local sources, are included on this TIP. Looking at that, 85% of it goes toward construction. Everything you see out there as you're driving around now with the spring construction season underway. And 15% is for pre-construction. So all the engineering work, any of the right-of-way acquisition that needs to be done for projects, and also utility relocations. So 208 total projects carry over, as I mentioned. There are 115 roadway projects worth 294 million. Pretty equal. State bridge projects, 114 worth $162 million. We have 30 local bridge projects worth $31 million. That's always very near and dear to our county governments and our local governments. So we meet up front with them early on in the odd numbered years to discuss their local bridge needs and try to add as many new projects as we can for local bridges. Just a lot of those are aged, deteriorating rapidly, and it's hard to come up with the funds to fix them. And so we can get those added under the tip, where they usually will be responsible just for 5% local match, or sometimes 20%, depending on how we end up designing those projects. We have 11 safety projects worth 18 million. And then a note here, I think probably, I know all this side of the room is familiar, but probably on the left side as well, for the Central Susquehanna Valley Transportation Project, which has been the #1 regional project for many years, going back to the 70s. That makes up 27% of the total funding for our regional area. And a lot of that's due to additional state funds that are set aside for that project. So we'll talk a little bit more here momentarily about the CSVT project and its status, with the southern section now still being underway. Next slide, looking at the financials a little bit more. There's a variety of federal and state funds that are allocated. A lot of this is tied to federal transportation legislation. So usually you have like a 6-year federal transportation bill authorizes the funds, and then they're appropriated each year by Congress. We take those funds that are given to the state and then allocate those across the regions that were identified earlier on, all those planning partner regions. The funds are allocated on some formulas encompassing things like population for the areas, vehicle miles traveled, number of lane miles, and then asset management factors as well, like poor condition pavement and poor bridge deck area, crashes for the safety factors for those funds being allocated, and so forth. So that federal funding makes up 55 or 44% of our regional amount that we discussed out of that 504 million. And then the state funds are used to match that a lot of times. Some things are 100% state funded. And then, like I said, there's additional funds that were dedicated by the governor and the secretary of PennDOT for the CSVT project, is why we have such a high volume of state funding on this tip. And then only about 1% is local funds. So where you have match requirements for some of these projects, usually the local bridges, or if it's another specific local project that is funded maybe through a discretionary grant program that gets listed on the tip. So the Highway Trust Fund is the primary driving force for that federal funding. The 18.4 cents a gallon that you pay when you fill up at the pump. We were talking about gas prices earlier. And then state funding comes through a variety of fees and taxes as well. Certainly the fuel tax, vehicle registrations, tire taxes, and things like that. And then next, go back to the funding side there real quickly on the county funding phases. These will kind of vary each program update depending on the needs. If there's a major reconstruction project on an interstate or a U.S. route, that's going to drive up some of these numbers and the percentages per county. For the most part, they will kind of mirror these just based on, like some of the things we talked about earlier, population levels and just the inventory of assets that exist in each county. But then that 30% for Snyder County is just the outsized influence of the CSVT project. So all that major roadway construction that's underway, and then the paving contracts and such for the CSVT, and Northumberland County as well is, getting a little bit of that impact as well with Ridge Road if you drive through the region and know about the upgrades that are planned for Ridge Road in Point Township, Northumberland County. That's why you see Snyder and Northumberland as the highest slices. And sorry, did you have a question about that? Did I answer it? Okay, great. Now, some of the specific projects, this just shows, if you look at that larger 11x17 printout, which is difficult to read, wanted to identify some of the major projects in the region here on this slide. Those that are greater than $3 million cost, or located on some major routes, or just regionally significant to our member counties and such. All these items are on the website. Certainly can view and go through them at a better level, and all the project descriptions that are entailed there in the PDF documents and downloads. For the CSVT, we're going to have a little bit more on that in a slide or two here following, and then showing one major project per county that we have of our 8 counties here. US 220 and State Route 64 in Clinton County, major concrete rehabilitations are planned there, about $7.7 million across the next 4 federal fiscal years. And that will be out for construction bidding likely in 2029 for US 220 and in 2028 for the Route 64 project. In Columbia County, showing the major investment here as State Route 118 bridge rehabilitation over East and West Branch Fishing Creek. That's about $4.8 million programmed on this tip and has a 2032 bid opening. Down next, Route 322 in Juniata County, major restoration there, about $4.6 million with a 2029 bid opening. And then Route 655 in Mifflin County, $6.4 million, also 2029 bid opening. Here closer to where we are today, the bottom photo shows the Route 642 intersection safety improvement project in Montour County. If you've driven through that, you'll see it's kind of been realigned and there's a lot of construction activity underway, temporary traffic signals and such. That's currently under construction, and about almost $5 million is still programmed on this next tip update. Route 405 resurfacing project, showing next there in Northumberland County. That's nearly $5 million and has a 2029 bid opening as well. Route 11 resurfacing project in Snyder County, about $4 million. And then last, Interstate 80 resurfacing projects, there's 3 of those in Union County. Those total nearly $10 million. So if you could drive through the mile run section of I-80 as you're heading west in Union County, the mile run to State Route 1010 project is currently under construction, but other sections will be bid in 2027 and 2028. In addition, I mentioned the local bridges. Obviously, we coordinate each of the counties and their bridge engineers and hear from municipalities regularly. So this tip update, we went through and scored, evaluated nearly 60 local bridge projects to try to add as many as we could on. The tip does include 30 local bridges, 3 in Clinton County, 7 in Columbia County, 1 in Mifflin, 5 in Montour County, 5 in Northumberland, 6 in Snyder, and 3 in Union County. So some additional new local bridges might be adjusted through the tip update just as we get cost savings, maybe as project goes out, gets completed, and there's still some funds available that we could start some new local bridges, or if there's new initiatives, or projects are funded maybe through some grant programs, we can include and list those in the tip as well. Now on the CSVT project, map here shows the project corridor. The red section has been completed. That's the northern section. So the interchange there in Winfield area, and then over Point Township with the major Susquehanna River Bridge crossing, and the connection to Route 147 that was opened in July of 2022. The early traffic volume data had showed that it was doing what it was designed to do, address congestion and safety. And so there were 16,000 total vehicles using the river bridge, including about 3,800 trucks. And the impacts, the benefits to Borough of Northumberland, I think you all probably know what that was like driving through there with the truck traffic and the congestion. 40% less vehicles per day were going through Northumberland after completion of the northern section, and 75% less truck traffic. Additional traffic counts will be completed here later in 2026, obviously to see the changes since it's been open to traffic in 2022, and also set a baseline for the southern section, which is shown in orange once that's open to traffic. So that southern section connects to that stub down at Sealands Grove near the Susquehanna Valley Mall, and then we'll connect into the northern section at Winfield area. In total includes 13 miles of new 4-lane limited access highway. There's 4 interchanges, 21 bridges, and 9 million cubic yards of earthwork activity. If you imagine that in kind of more, terms that we can grasp, perhaps when you go to Penn State football games, that's enough to fill Beaver Stadium more than 10 times that amount of earthwork. After accounting for all the project phases and inflation, the project's estimated to cost $975 million. 56% of that funding is state, which is primarily made available by Act 89 that was passed in 2013. That's really what allowed this project to move forward. And 44% of the funding is federal. A couple pictures for you here. They show construction of the southern section structures from fall of 2025. So there are 9 bridges and 4 noise walls to protect some of those communities and residential areas from the increased truck traffic and other vehicle traffic noise. And that's scheduled to be completed here in spring of 2026. I think just maybe some minor activities because it's 99% finished at this stage. So the final southern section contract is for paving that was awarded recently back in the fall of 2025. And some of the early work is underway. There's the clearing and grubbing drainage facilities, excavating and grading underway. And that will also include some guide rail, traffic signals, and highway lighting with this, and some intelligent transportation systems message boards for traffic as it's traversing the area. The main line is anticipated to be open to traffic in fall of 2027. And then once that's completed, the work on the Route 61 connector across the Veterans Memorial Bridge to Sunbury will be completed and opened in the fall of 2028. On the public transportation side, we do have a separate listing called the Transit Transportation Improvement Program. So we do outreach with those transit system operators we mentioned earlier. Call a Ride Service is one in Mifflin-Juniata region that usually programs projects. Geisinger Health System does for its Life Geisinger Living Independence for elderly, and the Lower Anthracite Transportation System as well. So usually they're for replacing vans or buses, maybe some computer upgrades, radios, servers, other office equipment that's needed. Sometimes building projects as well will be included on the tip. Just depends on what their needs are and what grants they're pursuing. So it's not like we have a regional allocation of funds here. It's usually dependent on these transit operators to apply to PennDOT and receive grant funding for them. As was mentioned, we have STEP in Clinton County. They also service Lycoming County, and a lot of times their projects will be listed on other tips, and the same for Rabbit Transit as well. But we can work through those, as they need to get things included. But the only fixed route service provider, as Chris mentioned, is the Lower Anthracite Transit System, covering like Mount Carmel, city of Shamokin, and other areas in the lower Northumberland County, and then some new connections that they've made coming into Sunbury and to the Susquehanna Valley Mall and some of the commercial destinations along routes 11 and 15. Most is demand responsive, so folks have to call in advance, schedule the trips to be made. But fortunately, as we've been discussing, the micro transit or the stop hopper service has been very successful as a demonstration project, meeting its performance metrics. And so that's available for folks to just use the app, arrange the trip within a certain geo-fenced area in those Columbia, Montour, Northumberland, Snyder Union areas, and make their trip available to them during convenient hours. Doesn't really fully satisfy second shift workers or weekends, but it's been a very successful model, and look to see that continue on. STEP, as Krista mentioned, is doing like a designated stop service to connect folks from like Renovo down into Lock Haven area and other major employers and shopping destinations. This will go probably at the end just to show some of these sites rather than interfering with the screen share now, but this is PennDOT's One Map. We have this available on our website, and it's hot linked here to the presentation. We can go out to this as well, but this is a way to visually go in and see all those roadway and bridge projects on the highway bridge tip. You can click on each of the points. There'll be pop-up attributes with the particular details on it, what's involved, the scheduling and sequence, when it's going to likely go out to bid, the financials, all that information through this nice visual interface that PennDOT runs through PennDOT One Map. And some projects aren't mapped, just if they're on the local network sometimes, or certainly the transit projects are not out there as well. A little bit about how the tip changes. This is the comprehensive update that we're doing now, that we conduct every 2 years. So usually the state transportation will kick that off. There'll be a public comment period, and folks will go in and be able to drop on the map, questions, comments, project proposals, recommendations they have as we're developing our long-range plan, working with our consultant team. We certainly do surveying as part of that. We get feedback from counties and municipalities regularly on local bridge or safety needs that they see in their communities. So those things can kind of just be chronicled and compiled over time as well. And the tip can be modified in between these update periods. So say there's a flooding event, major emergency repairs need to be done. Obviously things can come on as needed for that. You might need to defer some projects. As projects are being completed, there's cost savings, and we have the ability to maybe start designing or engineering new road or bridge projects as well. So it's kind of fluid, constantly in flux, but the major public comment solicitations here are done every 2 years, and then things are compiled in between for making amendments as well. And getting involved with the tip, we have a little bit of a handout as well, and wanted to touch on these items here. The tip really does rely on public input. Certainly elected officials and our county planning departments and others are weighing in, and they receive feedback at certainly their local government meetings and everything as well. But we rely on the public input and what the thoughts are, the reactions are to proposed projects, or just what needs people are experiencing on a daily basis as they're driving around, or they're trying to get to destinations, whether they be through public transportation, walking, or biking modes as well. So we want to hear on if regional priorities are well represented, if the investments are distributed across. We have a large region, those 8 counties, on an equitable fashion, and the means to do so. We can take this comment now during the update cycle, or anytime that anyone from the public wants to weigh in and share comments or concerns they have. We would encourage those folks to also reach out to their municipal and county officials, certainly as well. Come to us, certainly directly, speak to them, or we can kind of make those connections also. You could also sign up for our interested parties. I think most of you are on that in here in the room and certainly online, but we have that option to get added to our interested parties distribution list, and then we have public comment rounds. We share that information through constant contact emails. And I'll have a little bit more here in a moment on the commenting opportunities that we make available. So in terms of crafting effective public comments, just some tips or suggestions here. There's no minimum or maximum length for the comment to be effective, but kind of being concise sometimes is helpful. It's good to address trade-offs of what you're proposing or the opposite views. Supporting any claims, sound reasoning, documented evidence if there's been recent studies or anything that's been done locally to support them, and just the experience and impacts on you as a resident or businesses within the region. If you do disagree with something that is shown on the tip as a project, we'd like to see suggested alternatives for those. And types of comments we provide, as you read through the project descriptions, the narratives that are available for the projects, kind of commenting on those, supporting them or opposing them. If there's questions you have about just the process to develop these tips, there's a lot of information out there and a lot of different pieces to the process. So if you kind of want to understand that better, that's certainly a good comment. Questions about a specific program, funding program, or a project is good. commenting on how the project would, best meet the needs of the region. And again, kind of that mix of selected projects for balancing, and feedback on the documents that are available on our website, our web maps, or any other interactive sites that we have as well. And those comments can be considered, we're kind of at the later stages here as we're moving toward adoption, but we can keep comments on hand to then shape the next tip update or any other projects that we can be connected to or know of for potential fits to grant programs as well. And submitting a comment on the transportation improvement program, that graphic on the upper left goes to our social point page. We have that now as a really easily accessible and digestible website where we share information. It has a lot of tools that we can integrate for public feedback. So there's a comment form right out there. You could take that opportunity to submit a comment on the region's tip. On our regular main website is that bottom link. You can access the full array of materials. We do have like a comment capability within there as well, and the ability to sign up for our interested parties list through that comment form. Emails can go to Kristen for any comments you have about the projects or the tip overall, and then certainly traditional methods of mail as well with that information shown. And all comments are due for this comment period by 4 p.m. on May 22nd. And this shows the schedule. Again, the closure of the public comment period on May 22nd at 4 p.m. Our SEDA COG MPO is scheduled to adopt this tip on June 12th. Physical site venue is at our office off Route 15, but those are hybrid meetings, so there's always a virtual option. Anyone from the public would like to participate or listen along, we provide that opportunity. That runs from 9:30 to 11:30, just so you're aware of that. Has other action items that will be on the agenda, but the adoption of the tip will be on there. And then we'll submit the region's tip to PennDOT directly after that meeting. And then come August, the State Transportation Commission will hold its official meeting to adopt the whole state's transportation improvement program, but each of the individual planning region tips as well that roll up into that. And then in September, the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration will give their approval of the region's tip and the statewide one. And then come October 1st, the new tip takes effect. So that follows the federal fiscal year. And so the first federal fiscal year is 2027, which actually starts October 1st of 2026. And then there'll be a whole, array of adjustments occurring there, since a lot of things are kind of locked out right now with the current tip will be expiring. And as I mentioned, it's a fluid document, so it'll be amended, changed, revised frequently thereafter. Each of our SEDA COG MPO public meetings has tip approval items on there. So some things are low threshold, they're not a significant cost, they're not new projects being added. And so those are just more administrative actions. But when there are amendments, those are called out specifically. So projects that increases or adjustments that are $2 million or more, new projects being added to tip that use federal funds, things of that nature rise to the level of being an amendment. And so those are always included in our meeting packets, and they're shown on our website as well. And we've reached the stage where we're essentially done talking as staff to the MPO and part of the team that helps to develop it. So you see our information for myself, SEDA COG, and Kristen McLaughlin. And then next slide is just the Q&A. So for anyone here in the room that has any questions they'd like to pose, and certainly anyone online, we like to provide that opportunity. We can go out to the websites and show you a little bit how to access some information there as well during this process, but feel free to toss any questions our way. We'll go to Ken first. Yeah.
Steve, right?
Yes.
I have a glorious honor of living next to that CSVT project,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been an eye-opener watching that be constructed. My wife and I knew it was going to be right at our property line, so we weren't surprised. But the one day they were moving dirt. I went down to see what it looked like, and I thought they were building the runway for the space shuttle to land. And it was a heck of a earth moving undertaking, and I have a new appreciation for explosives now too.
Mhm.
Because they have blasted, I don't know how many times. There's one day they set off a charge, and I thought I knocked the throwing loose in my teeth. But I'm glad to hear it's almost finished. One big question: there's been several very serious accidents where Granger Road intersects 15 South. And in fact, one just last week, I think it was. And I'm hoping that PennDOT reevaluates that whole area, because it's scary. And I've had people tell me how they approach coming down Granger to get across, and they're concerned because the trucks coming off the bridge, when they hit that ramp to get on the 15, it's like they take the foot off the brake and it goes freewheeling, and they're flying down that daggone road. And one young man told me he just sort of very slowly, he doesn't come to a complete stop, even though policeman's usually sitting at that vacant area. He hasn't got a ticket yet. So I'm thinking one of these days he probably will. Because I remarked to him, I said, you're doing a New Jersey stop. And I know I got a ticket by doing that in Lancaster County years ago. And I beat the thing, and the judge told me, you beat this on technicality. And I said, Your Honor, you're right. I don't care. I beat it right. And, but I can see a lot of problems if that's not evaluated and redone. And my wife and I can always tell if there's an accident on 15, the traffic in front of our house on Park Road explodes, and it'll take us 20 minutes to get down to the end of our driveway and make a right turn. Don't even try doing a left turn. But enough of me talking.
No, it's fine.
But I'm going to fill that comment in with some other one. Kristen, you're going to become my new pen pal.
Perfectly fine.
But there's a lot of really good stuff in that tip. And like I told Kristen the one time I sent it an email, I was really interested in the rail trail being expanded up to Swingle. Because in my old age, that's the only way I stay in shape, is riding that rail trail. And it's probably the best program that or idea anyone ever had to take that vacant rail bed. And there's a lot of people make use of it, a lot of walkers. And I still haven't figured out how to get, I'm going to get in trouble here. The elderly ladies that walk on shoulder to shoulder, they're 10 wide. And, bring it to their attention that I'm coming up on their little coterie there. And I say, old guy on the left. But it gets a lot of use, and I'm hoping that they get the resurfacing done so I can get back on it. Because I've got a program of my own, something I've been trying to do for years. I'm a race car guy, and I've got the opportunity in June to ride my bike around the track up at Watkins Glen. But I gotta get myself in shape before then, because I've sort of fallen out of my routine of staying in shape, and the rail trail helped me stay in that. And don't let anybody tell you that rail trail is absolutely flat, because it's not. It's got some minuscule little grade changes, but they help build up your resistance, your muscle tone, that type of thing. And my biggest problem now is, other than the lady walking, are these daggone electric bikes. Because you're supposed to call out on the right, on the left, on the path, but the electric bikes are so daggone quiet. Yeah, a lot of people don't do that. So,
Sure. Yeah, you can certainly comment on some like policy level things through the tip, but that's more for your state legislators to address that one.
but all in all, I thank you for the opportunity to review the tip. And, like I said, Kristen will gonna regret it, because now you don't get a Christmas present because you're my pen pal, so don't think you're getting a present at Christmas time. But I am not computer illiterate. I'm what I call computer stupid. And these different links and stuff it really helps. I just gotta get my wife to allow me to buy a bigger computer with a bigger screen so I can read them in one sitting rather than flipping from page to page. But that's between her and I.
Sure. Yeah, we like to offer these certainly in-person comment opportunities, but one thing we didn't mention, we will have draft versions of the tip out at all the main county buildings, so those are on display as well. So I'm here when we were coming in this morning to register to sign in, and so we do take those opportunities, and then each of the main public libraries host a copy of the long range plan and the transportation improvement program.
Once you get all this road work done, I won't be able to take advantage of it because I had a half dozen strokes last year. And thanks to whomever in Harrisburg, when you have a stroke, you lose your driving certificate. And that's killing me. But I'll get over it. I just have to make sure my wife doesn't mind being my
Thank you. And I forgot to mention with this system here, I'm not sure if everyone online could hear, but if there's any other questions or comments, I think if you hit the button there, that'll make sure that our virtual, I mean, we can hear you in the room, but that'll make sure that they could hear as well if there's a question or comment. But for Chris King, I know is with us from District 3, one of the comments there that Ken had was some safety concerns over the CSVT project corridor and the construction activity. So I know there's some temporary things that are out there and now that when it's fully completed, the southern section will be addressed with some of those ramp interchange issues and such. But that was a comment, Chris, just on some of the safety concerns at the Granger Road intersection with Route 15.
Yeah, I heard that, Steve. I sent it on to our safety section in the traffic unit, so I'll let you know what they say.
Great, thanks. Yeah, there was a recent one. I'm not sure how severe the injuries were, or if there was a.
I think my wife is reading it. Said that one lady died.
It was valid.
I was in the traffic when that happened. I mean, I didn't see it happen, but
Yeah,
I saw that
but
at least the one car was.
but when those truckers
It's
come
very
off the bridge
yeah.
and on that ramp to get on the 15, they don't move over. It's like I've met a couple of them coming off, and it's almost a gamble who's going to give in first. And I drove truck for a while, so I know their mentality. And I don't want to become a roadkill.
Sure. Yeah, before we close this for the long range plan, a minute or two, we want to make sure, Becky or Beth, were there any questions you had? Yes. I think Chris said he could hear okay, right? So maybe we can avoid that for you. Yep.
Hello, I'm Beth Goldman. I'm from Danville and I live on West Market Street. I'm here to speak about project 107128. That is the rehab of the cut and cover in Danville. We're having a public meeting. It isn't scheduled yet. I realize that, but this is to reinforce what I am asking. I was witness to seeing the woman crushed to death on Market Street in Lewisburg by a semi few years ago. And I want to make sure that PennDOT makes every effort to divert the truck traffic from downtown Danville. They said they aren't able to do that. I believe that we need to get the technology people involved, because if you put the information on the 511 website and that information is scraped by all the mapping services, you can indicate that truck traffic is temporarily halted. What's happening is there's long haul truck traffic taking the Danville exit and going down 54 to get to 901. where the distribution centers are, where they should be able to just be sent to 80 to 81 and not come the country roads. There were meetings that were in Helixburg, this was brought up. So this is a reoccurring thing about the massive amount of truck traffic, but specifically for when you're closing the tunnel in 54 for Danville, it's going to be a very dangerous situation, and pedestrian crossing is a very big concern, especially since I saw the woman die in Lewisburg from walking in front of a tractor trailer. I just want to make sure that all the steps are exhausted and that you can't do something with the 511 system to tell the trucks in MapQuest and the mapping services that they shouldn't use that exit. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Were you able to hear that okay, Chris, as well, as far as traffic control for the Route 54 cut and cover?
Yep, I got it, Steve. I will pass it on to the PM and the traffic unit. I know we have generally not a lot of success when we contact the mapping providers, such as Google, etc. But I'll see what they say about using the 511 avenue. I don't know if
They're scraping the data from your server and updating it and feeding it into their mapping services. So my understanding is that you can technically inform them that there is a temporary stop or diversion to not use 54. I appreciate anything you can do to look into it then.
Yep, you bet.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a statewide concern, so, not isolated to this area, so thank you. And Becky,
So
yes.
question. So I'm Becky Stugart, I'm with the Community Giving Foundation, and I work very closely with the nonprofits in our region. Last year, we visited over 100. And what we had consistently seen was that there's a lot of concern around transportation being a foundational need that affects all of the other regional needs. Everything from missing appointments to turning down jobs to struggling to have food access, not because the services don't exist, but because they can't get there. And so from what we're seeing, transportation isn't just the one issue. It affects healthcare, housing, childcare, workforce participation. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how this plan addresses some of those connection pieces as well.
A little harder to find like that direct linkage or connection, but other things that we do, like that coordinated transit plan that Kristen referenced, that's from 2024, that really helps to set those kind of strategies, action items, and then as those transit operators would pursue those grant programs and specifically cite how they're tied to them. So we try to encompass them, work closely with the transit operators, do separate surveying of transit dependent populations, things like that. Then certainly we get connected and plugged into like the community health needs assessments that the hospital systems do, and try to be a part actively as a stakeholder in that process, and surveys, forums, and groups as well. So it's kind of more the connecting the different information pieces. And then, as you know, kind of the stop hopper service. We've been working closely with Rapid Transit on that. We did an initial demonstration with getting the state funding for that, and then since to get that implemented and try to get the additional local funding committed for that as well. So kind of things that aren't maybe directly tied to the tip, since it's more of a capital program for like vehicle needs that the transit systems have, but pulling these things together, and then through our long range transportation plan as well, which kind of sets that 20-25 year vision that we'll be talking about. So it's that consistency and the linkage there. But if you were just to look at the draft transportation improvement program, it might be hard to find that direct linkage to a specific program or project.
But all the nonprofits have the ability to come and make comments and share these needs. And
Absolutely, yeah. These comment periods are always open to any organization, any member of the public, and then we can hopefully take those, do some additional investigations, analysis, research potentially. Sometimes we can get special study money through PennDOT for certain things as well, to tackle these more directly. But it does involve a multi pronged solution and stakeholders to really address those.
thank you.
Yeah, and one other point, we do also have a public participation panel. It's sort of difficult to get all of the players engaged in it. But that involves like the community action agencies, the transit agencies, any other stakeholders that we've been able to identify that represent in some capacity underserved populations or people who are less likely to become involved in these types of meetings, to have to sit and, go through all of this documents in order to comment when, you've got everything else going on in their lives. And so, I'd like to maybe connect with you a little bit
Yeah.
more to try to get that public participation
That would be
panel
great.
kind of back on its feet again. Because that's where we're looking to say to those providers, hey, here's the plans we're putting together, here's the initiatives we're doing, and getting that feedback and continuing those conversations.
And Kristen, what was that group called?
It's a public participation panel.
Thank you very much.
I'll reach out to you about it.
I appreciate it.
And we really wanted to create that a few years back to make sure we had representation of underserved populations and groups. So those kind of voices coming to the forefront that sometimes you don't always receive through comment periods and such. So certainly individuals from the general public, but where we had organizations, such as your own, really connected to that and helping to then shape these kinds of plans as they're developed and, policies that are put forward as priorities. So it just kind of gives more, support and justification when they go in for different grant programs. So those things, a lot of times they're outside of like the regional funds that are allocated for us. But if you can really make a convincing case, and sometimes you can show that nexus to, different things. So, hopefully that can be a result. But it's multimodal, as we mentioned. There's certainly bicycle pedestrian needs that are reflected as a separate transit tip. But the bulk of the funding that comes to the region for this transportation program is for highway and bridge and safety improvements. Any comments or questions from any of our online participants?
Hey, Steve, this is Justin Botchick from PennDOT. I kind of wanted to call out. So recently, I've come to be aware that Rabbit Transit, originally they would carry their projects specifically on the York County MPO tip. Recently, due to FTA requesting, I found out this recently, but they basically, if, for example, you had like Rapid Transit services this area, so if you had a project that was specific to this area, to the SEDA COG MPO, FTA wanted to see that on the actual SEDA COG MPO transit tip. So in coordination with Rabbit Transit, and I did discuss this with Kristen last week, we actually added one single project for Rabbit Transit on the 2027 draft tip. The project is specifically, it is cash flowed over 2 years in 2027 and 2028. It is microtransit vehicles to purchase. It's a total of 1.3 million with a little over $1 million coming from federal funds, and then a little over $250,000 in state funds, and then the rest a local match. And again, we added this on Friday, and I have sent a updated transit tip and an updated public narrative to Kristen and Steve this morning. But like I said, this is coming out of FTA requesting this be added. Originally, like I said, they carried all their projects in the York County MPO tip, but recently they basically requested, we're not the only area that has this. They have other areas they serve that they had to move their projects on that specific MPO or RPO tip. So just wanted to make note of that at the public meeting that these are now added on the tip. If there are any questions or comments or concerns about that?
You say the totals again from each category, the funding part?
It would be exactly, I can give you the exact amount. Bear with me 1 second. I have the rough totals, but I'll just give you the exact amount. The project is MPMS 124104. It is a total of $1,040,000 for federal 5307 funds, and then $251,614 for the state funds, and then $8,386 for the local funds.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that.
And what Justin and I had discussed was updating the website to have the new transit tip there and then making a note that it had been, the date that it had been updated. So if you did want to look at additional information on it, it'll be up there.
Thank you.
And those were micro transit vehicles, that would be acquired for where? I know Berwick
It's-
was specifically looking for an additional vehicle, and I'm wondering, like, is this vehicle for one specific region? And if so, has it been identified?
I can coordinate with Rapid Transit and get a more specific answer to that question. As far as I don't know the specifics of. I just know it's for the SEDA COG region, but I don't know specifically which route or which county that they'd be serving.
Great. So they have like asset management statistically they have to follow for useful life. So when they get to certain mileage or certain age, so whether this is, I'm not positive, like retiring ones they already have in the pool, or if it's adding new ones to add additional service within the reach. I'm not positive. So yeah, thanks for checking into that, Justin. And these things are kind of tied to when they, like I mentioned, go after the grant funding available through either PennDOT's Bureau of Public Transportation or the Federal Transit Administration. So we'll start carrying those. It's been their kind of policy in the past for these multi-county, multi-region operators that are more, maybe hosted within a certain county. They would just show it on that transit tip. But with this kind of change being made, it certainly makes sense within our region to reflect it there as well. Even though they're based in York County, they service Dauphin County, Perry County, Adams County, Franklin County, York County, in addition to within our region. So thanks for that change, and we're glad to see that, and certainly continue to meet the needs that exist out there with the stop hopper service.
I think from talking to Chris and Steve, I'm sure she probably said some to you, but I think in the future we're just going to plan on reaching out to them. You know what I mean? Because in the past we didn't have to deal with this, that they were on the specific York County MPO tip. But in the future we'll avoid this issue.
Great, makes sense. Any final questions, comments? Just I think it'd probably be the same participants here for the long range transportation plan, but any final comments before we close the tip portion of the presentation? Well, thanks everybody. Thanks, Kristen.
Okay, so I am, in order to make sure that we have the recordings and all that type of stuff separated, I am going to stop the recording and then and let's see if we can get this screen share correct this time.